had a chance to talk to a journalist before the meeting, and he said, what do you think, how should the U.S. prepare itself? It's always great to be able to give free advice. But what I said was, I thought that in any summit with China, you need to bring the following to the table. Profound respect for everything that China has achieved and respect for the many challenges that China faces. And if you can find this tone of respect and empathy and understanding, a great deal is possible. But with that, you also need to bring clarity to the table. And one of the things that I'm a little bit worried about from Sunnylands is ambiguity. Ambiguity, you can have people talk about things in general and then leave believing that very different outcomes have been achieved. So there is no substitution for clarity. If cybersecurity is at the center of the agenda, you better make sure that your interlocutors understand that. Consistency. Whatever you decide, follow up on. What is important today is important tomorrow and is emphasized. I invoked Kevin Rudd at the start of this. One of the problems that the Chinese ultimately had with Kevin Rudd was, even though he was a sinologist, spoke Chinese, studied the Analects of Confucius, they found that he was inconsistent in his engagement of them. I think they far prefer Julia Gillard, who is not a sinologist, but who seems to have a more consistent China policy. But finally, confidence. The United States has to go into this, I think, and has to continue with the strong notion that they are and will remain a Pacific power. This isn't about ceding influence or about dividing up the world. The United States remains a Pacific power that can certainly accommodate and welcome China's rise. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the United States doesn't continue to have core interests even in that part of the world. Yan Shui-Tong, who's a pretty conservative foreign policy analyst at Tsinghua University, someone who I think has spoken in favor of a more assertive policy for China, had a really interesting blog where he talked about, it was, let's not be friends. He said this isn't about building some false kind of understanding, it's about understanding how we're different. And he talked about preventive cooperation. And he said the safest place to be is in a place where you're absolutely clear about where you agree and where you disagree. And you can build a lot of very effective mechanisms if you reach that place. But you're in a very dangerous place if you kind of schmooze over some of these fundamental differences and you're continually bumping into one another.